Hi, everyone. Welcome to the webinar. Thank you for joining us. My name is Ashley King, and I'm part of the customer success team here at Tax 990. We are an IRS authorized e-file provider that helps nonprofits easily and securely file their Form 990 returns online. Our platform is designed to simplify the filing process, save organizations time, and help them stay compliant with IRS requirements. Today, we're excited to kick off our grant writing webinar series with the first session, Learning the Fundamentals of Grant Funding. This is the first of our webinars designed to help nonprofits build a strong foundation in grant writing and funding opportunities. I'm also excited to introduce today's presenter, Mary Louise Resch, Senior Disaster Recovery VOAD Coordinator, and a Senior Certified Grant Specialist. Our team had the pleasure of connecting with Mary at the Together SC conference earlier this year, and we're thrilled to have her share her knowledge and experience with us today. Mary, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. I understand we have a large group today. This session may not go the full hour. This is typically the first session where I get to know you and you get to know me. And we talk about some of the fundamentals of grant writing, how do you do research, those types of things. So without further ado, let's get started. This is going to be our agenda for the next 4 sessions. Today, we're going to do some introductions and meeting the presenter. We're going to talk a little bit about the backgrounds of grants. For example, what is a grant? How does it differ from a loan? How do I know if I'm a good fit? Typical documents. What we have found in our experience is that the more you can do in advance, the better it is when it comes time to writing a grant, because you don't feel as rushed and you're not throwing something together just for the sake of a deadline. Some common components of a solid grant proposal. This will change depending on your funder. However, there are some common components that you can already have on your desktop that you can easily move into those grant proposals. How can I be sure I'm writing the best proposal? We're going to give you some tips and tricks that we've learned along the way. And what do you do when you receive the funding? That's my favorite part of the whole class. But then again, tips for doing a grants presentation. And finally, we're going to do a wrap-up and Q&A. Since this is a 4-session class, if you have questions that you'd like answered, and if you put them in the chat, and we will try to address them as we go through. Since we have so many people on the call today, if you could put your information in the chat and talk about a couple of things. Your organization that you work for. Have you ever written a grant proposal before? And what types of projects or programs would your organization need additional funding for? And actually, let me know if that is possible.
Yes.
And Ashley, how many people do we have on today? Do you know?
80.
80. Well, thank you for taking your time out this afternoon. So don't everyone volunteer at once, particularly if you have an area you want to focus your funding on. That helps me a lot, because then I can also help tailor these sessions to best meet your needs as well. All right, it looks like everyone is being shy today. let me talk about some of the things that I see on a regular basis. Number one is operations dollars. Everyone, and particularly funders, love to see something shiny and new and that does a specific program or provides a specific thing. What they don't typically provide is operations dollars. So one of the things that we do with the group that we work with in disaster recovery is we provide them a list of grant funders who deal only with operations dollars. The second one is capital expenditures and equipment costs. Those typically aren't in your everyday grant proposal. So you want to go ahead and find those funders who do capital expenditures. And one of the things I found fascinating when I was working on that list for our group is I found just for folks in South Carolina, we found about 90 different organizations who fund capital expenditures and purchases. So keep that in mind as you're doing your research. And the other areas that we hear a lot about are public safety, disaster. I work at a disaster recovery agency. But we also do a lot of work with veterans organizations. So you're going to hear about some veterans grants that are available. Also, we hear a lot about organizations who are serving individuals with disabilities. And also, we are seeing more and more faith-based initiatives coming online that need funding specifically for the type of work that they do. Does that make sense to everyone? Oh, I hit some of your comments right away. This is great stuff. And even if you're new to grants, don't feel like you'll be overwhelmed. By the time you're finished with the 4 sessions we have, you should be able to walk away with the basic fundamentals of how to write a solid proposal. And trust me, you will tweak it on a regular basis. I can remember going back and looking at grants I've written in the past and going back, I can't believe I wrote that. So I saw someone with historic that was looking for historic preservation. There is actually some great money on restoring historic statues that are online. So yes, there is funding for that. We're going to talk a little bit about grants and loans. We've got after school programs are great. I met with the group this morning. We are talking about they are doing programs to purchase musical instruments for schools. So I went online and found them a resource that just does grants for buying instruments for school programs. So this is exciting. All right. Having looked through some of your information, I think we're off to a good start. Poverty research. I just saw poverty research. Yes, federal government, HHS has some funding that is it's connected with the Healthy People 2030 project. And if you're not using Healthy People 2030 as one of your data sources to back up your program, this is your first hint. This is your first piece of note taking. You want to connect with Healthy People 2030, and you can Google it online. It will also give you information on specific areas within poverty, and also it deals with the social indicators of health, which is also related to poverty. So let's see, who else? Hypnotherapy, yes. Again, Veterans Administration has dollars, particularly for service, direct service providers. So I think the long story short is yes. There are a bunch. Oh, it says we're grassroots. Oh, I saw somebody with Hurricane Helene recovery. My job is the VOAD, senior VOAD coordinator for disaster recovery here in South Carolina. So we will have to talk. All right. Next slide. This is a little bit about me. I've been working in the grant space for about 38 years. I wrote my first grant in 1987, and I'm sure that's probably longer than some of you have been around. But when I started writing grants back in the day, it was carbon paper and typewriters, which were a nightmare. We didn't have things like grants.gov. We didn't have a lot of research tools. So I spent a lot of time in the library. I've worked in fields varying from juvenile justice, dropout prevention, food insecurity, and now I actually work in a disaster recovery phase, working with 274 nonprofit organizations here in South Carolina. All right. Okay. When most people think about grants, there are typically two myths. Number one, that it's a huge mystery, it's some combination of voodoo and magic, or that you've got to be a large nonprofit or business with lots of staff and resources to even apply for money. I'm here to tell you neither one is true. Before I came to SCOR, I actually owned a grant writing company, and most of the clients that I worked with had maybe one or two staff, part-time staff. A lot of them were run by volunteers. And the bottom line is you don't know what you don't know. And if you don't know how to write a grant, it can be very intimidating. When I took this job at SCOR, we were sending out these wonderful lists of grant opportunities. And then about a month or two after we started doing that, it hit us that, well, this is all well and good, but if you don't know how to write a grant or you're not comfortable writing a grant, then you're not going to apply for these opportunities, which led us to doing grant workshops like we're going to be doing for the next few sessions. And also, a lot of nonprofits, once you develop your basic continuity and your basic boilerplate for your grant, what used to take you days to prepare, you can now actually do grants in a period of hours. So that's where we want to get you to by the end of this class. And there are grants. I just saw one from Florida. Yes, there are operating grants in Florida, and what we can do, and I'll ask you if this would be something you're interested in. We actually do specialized grant lists in 7 different categories. If you'd be interested in getting a copy of this just to get a foothold on where you can start, please let me know. And at the end of our 4 weeks together, I'm happy to provide that to you at no cost because we've already done the research. You do need to keep in mind that these resources were developed for a South Carolina audience, but it does give you an opportunity to go forward and start doing your research. I've seen lots of yeses, so we will make sure that we get this put together, and we'll get it sent over to you. The other thing that our office does is we do something called Friday Fun with the D in parentheses day that talks about upcoming training opportunities, upcoming in-kind contributions that might be coming available, upcoming community events that you might want to partner with. And then the reason why everyone actually reads the newsletter is we typically attach between a half dozen and a dozen currently open grant cycles. So if you would like to be added, then yes, we can definitely do that. And I see, yes, there are grants in Arizona. And if hopefully by one of the future opportunities, what I can do is actually start pulling up some specific areas for different states. Okay. Thomas P. Tip O'Neill used to be the Speaker of the House of Representatives at the U.S. Congress. One of his favorite sayings is, all politics is local. And my corollary on that is, for that matter, so are all grants. You will get tired of me saying, it's not what you know, it's who you know. The reason I'm in this job is because the 1SC fund, which is the Major Disaster Fund for South Carolina, actually recruited me for this job because we had such a solid working relationship in previous disasters and here in South Carolina. It's all about getting to know your funders, getting to know what they do fund, what they don't fund, getting them interested in your organization. And that could be as simple as adding them to your organization newsletter. It could be as simple as setting up a Zoom call or a Teams call with them. We do that on a regular basis. We work with a lot of nonprofits across the state and across the country. I'm going to be busy, y'all. I can see I'm going to be looking up grants across the country, but it'll be a challenge. Okay. Now comes the hard part. What is a grant and how's it different than a loan? According to Webster's Dictionary, a grant is defined as a sum of money given by a government or other organization for a particular purpose. And the difference between a grant and a loan is a repayment requirement. Most grants you do not repay, except in extenuating circumstances. Can anyone type in the chat when you think you would have to pay back a grant? And the other side of that, is there a time when you would have to pay back, or you wouldn't have to pay back a loan? I'm seeing some good answers. When you have, Courtney got it spot on. When you haven't done what you said you do, particularly if you use the money on a totally different project without talking to the funder, that is the quickest way to have to pay back the money. The other times you could be asked to pay back the money is if you don't use the money in a given time. Some grants are 6 months, some are a year, some are up to 3 years. However, what you need to understand is that you can ask for what we call a no-cost extension. I'm going through that with several of our local projects now. They have some major grants from the Red Cross for disaster recovery. They say, but our deadline's coming up. What do we do? I'm going to have to pay this money back. And we've talked to them, and we've also talked to the funders and said, we're going to have these organizations that are going to ask what is called a no-cost project extension. Jim, you brought up another point. If the organization ceases to exist, that's also a very true statement. How about, do you ever have to pay back, or do you ever not have to pay back a loan? If it's been forgiven, what's the best example of a loan that in recent years have been forgiven across the country? Does everybody remember the PPP loans during COVID? There you go, Sean. Good answer. And actually now some of the student loans are being forgiven, but a primary example of that would be the PPP loans. They started out as loans. However, as if you spent the money correctly and they were used in the way that it was supposed to, then they were forgiven and actually ended up being a grant. One of the things you do not do, and I'm going to give you some examples of great projects, and I'm going to give you some examples of the quickest way you can go to jail with handling grant money. We had a local nonprofit organization here in South Carolina. Their finance director thought that $330,000 worth of PPP funds and another $100,000 in individual donations looked better in her personal checking account than it did in the organization's checking account. And needless to say, the only thing that saved that organization from being, you're going to hear the phrase debarred, which means you can't get any federal money anywhere for 7 years, is what happened is the organization itself, through its audit process, found what happened. They reported it to the IRS and the funding source. And fortunately, they did not have to repay the $330,000. Would anyone like to hazard a guess of what happened to that finance director? She is now, good job, Courtney. She is now a guest of the federal government at Club Fed. She was convicted of embezzlement. Again, the only reason the agency that she is working for did not also get debarred was that the organization found it before the feds did. They did have to pay some fines. But again, this would be, I can't overemphasize, mishandling your finances are the quickest way to go to jail. It's also the quickest way for your organization to lose its tax-exempt status. And yes, Joan, she was fired before she went to jail. This is an interesting one. The 527 political organizations. Ronnie, I'll take that under consideration. And we do some work with local government agencies across the state. So stay tuned. Okay, I told you this was going to be a short session today. And especially since I don't have the interaction, typically I do these face-to-face and I have people introducing themselves. Can for-profit, good start off to the Q&A section. Can for-profit companies apply for any grants? Absolutely, Fane. Do you hear of a little group called Federal Express? Federal Express has grants that you can apply for where they also do cash. And then I believe if you're a grant recipient, you also receive a free year of FedEx services. If you are a woman-owned business, there's a group called Hello Alice. They give away $10,000 a month to women-owned businesses across the country. Would political Harvard Ministries, that would be a one I'd have to do some research on. Again, there are faith-based initiatives. There are also political-based initiatives. So let me do some research on that one. Community martial arts programs. There are grants. And we'll get into this further in the next couple of sessions. But have you heard about the different athletes have their own foundations? So finding out if there's a martial arts expert that has a community foundation that would be interested in giving. Also, some of the federal grants are available for exercise and wellness. So that might be an opportunity. Yes, grants for minority-owned organizations, absolutely. Horse rescues, yes, I actually just did some research for a local organization recently. They were doing horse rescue, particularly during disaster, so we connected them. And also, if you're doing any other animal rescue, there are at least 3 different pet food organizations, including, I want to say CalCan, and Mars, who does some of the dry pet food. They actually give away, they give grants and in-kind contributions to local organizations. Operational support for transgender, yes, there are funds available. Where are you Courtney, where are you in the country? Because we should be able, I know there's one foundation. Oh, you're here in South Carolina. Okay, cool. Courtney, let me see if I can find. Okay, I've got arts, dance. Yes, actually, yes, for all of these. What is your biggest, let me ask you this, what is your biggest challenge when you're writing grants? Is it finding money? Is it actually doing the application? Is it more so that you're just not comfortable in the grant space yet? Michael, definitely. I just saw something, I want to say National Endowment for the Arts might have had something that I saw. So check them out. Finding grant opportunities. All right. As your last segment today, I'm going to give you some places where you can start looking for grants in your local community. And they're more available than you think. The first place I always encourage people to go is their local library. Local libraries often maintain grant collections within their library that you can use on site. And for those folks here in South Carolina, if you go to the state library, they have a huge grant collection. They will not let you check out the most frequent or the most recent version of a grant directory. But what they will do is they keep back files of past editions, which have most of the same grants in them. And they will, through interlibrary loan, let you check those out. So that's a good place to start, and it doesn't cost you anything. U.S. Chamber of Commerce, I saw some business people in here. Chamber of Commerce and Small Business Administration. Did anybody know that Small Business Administration has mentor programs that does like loans and grants to small businesses for startups? I had no idea. I had a meeting with the state director for SBA last week, and I had no idea these programs were available. How many of you are interested in school grants? I recently just did some research. This nonprofit gives musical instruments to kids in schools. There's actually a website called instrumental.com, and I'm going to type it in the chat so y'all have it. Instrumental.com does a great job of listing a variety of funders who provide funding to. Okay, good. Oh, Indigenous. There's actually a couple of good Indigenous. I think it's actually a film grant that is posted under U.S. Department of the Interior. Check out Interior. Also, grants.gov. How many of you are registered with grants.gov? Grants.gov is a free resource. You can sign up, and what I love about grants.gov is when you do sign up for grants.gov, you can actually use keywords. So when a grant comes onto grants.gov, which is the federal grant list, it'll automatically show up in your email box. So you don't have to. Oh, thank you, Teresa. Teresa, can we share this? OpenAI just launched a $50 million fund to support nonprofits exploring AI. I am getting a lot of questions these days about AI. To me, AI is the best thing since sliced white bread for doing research on grants and grant resources. I'm not totally sold on how well they write a proposal yet, but I'm going to keep trying. Also, Grantable. Has anyone heard of Grantable? I think it's grantable.org. Grantable.org, or it's either grantable.org or grantable.gov. Or sorry, of .com. Let's see, who else? Also, for those of you working in the faith-based sector, most of the major faith-based denominations also have grant funding that are available, and it's available across the country. Another one that I'm familiar with is Grantivia.com. Now, some of these do have registration. I'm going to be honest. And if you're probably wondering which of these that I use for my groups, and I use I use grantwatch.com. I think it's $140 a year. And I will tell you, I've gotten some of the best resources out of GrantWatch. And again, you can search by topic. You can actually set up a table or a desktop dashboard that will automatically, when you're going through and researching, you can put it into your queue. It'll send you reminders. And most of these are free. And let me go back to my my for-profit folks. I had no idea. America's Seed Fund is funded by the National Science Foundation for up to $2 million for startups doing deep technologies. Kenesha, yes, there is funding for domestic violence programs. Again, Health and Human Services has funding. And actually, if I'm not mistaken, Veterans Administration, VA, may also have some money available. All right. Other questions? With that, I am going to let you go a little early today. Don't plan on doing this for the next 3 sessions. This is just the get to know you part of the program. And now that I kind of know some of the areas that you're looking for, hopefully in the next class, I'll have some solid resources for you. So until then, I will turn it back over to Ashley.
Thank you all for joining us today. A special thank you to Mary Louise Resch for sharing your knowledge and experience with us. We truly appreciate you taking the time to help our nonprofit community better understand the fundamentals of grant funding. We hope you found today's session valuable and that you leave with a stronger foundation to begin or continue your grant writing journey. Be sure to join us for the next webinar in our 4-part series as we continue building on today's discussion. This session will be July 14th at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you again for being here, and we look forward to seeing you at our next session. Have a wonderful day.